Thanks, Liz. Welcome to What's New in Axe, high coverage, high signal, no noise. My name is Dylan Barrell. I created Axe Core back in the day, and I'm going to walk you through all the things we've done over the last year in the various different Axe products. So firstly, I'd like to announce something I'm really excited about. If you attended the keynote with Preeti, you would have heard that she's also very excited about this. And the reason we're excited is it's really the first accessibility testing and reporting system designed with the dev team in mind. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is it really solves some of the problems that dev teams need to solve. First of all, it knows about your repository structure. So it automatically can pick up the information about Git, and it sends that along to the reporting system along with the results from the accessibility testing. And then it can do some really interesting things with that. So first of all, it knows about your branches, it knows about your commits. So if you send it duplicate data, it knows that it's got duplicate data and it only shows the most recent version of that. So it doesn't have to worry about trying to figure out which of those pieces of data is new and where it belongs. The other thing it can do is it now knows that whether or not there are changes from one commit to another. So it can show you very interesting comparisons of results. So it can show you, for example, if you have a branch like a feature branch, it can show you the comparison between that branch and the default branch. So you know that when you merge that branch into the default branch, what is going to happen to your accessibility. So it's really, really exciting. There's a lot more to it. Please attend the session today at 4 p.m. And you'll get all the real insight, including how we combine what I've just talked about with a new zero code integration module so you can get your accessibility results in seconds. So Axe Core over the last year, as I alluded to in the keynote, has really seen a great uptake. We've reached 750 million cumulative NPM downloads. That's up more than 50% since this time last year. We're at 13 million weekly NPM downloads, also up about 50% since last year. We have 4.85 million GitHub projects using Axe Core. That's up over 200% since last year. 900 packages on NPM that include Axe Core. 328 published NPM packages, which is up 30% from last year. We have over 500,000 weekly users of our extensions, and we have 160,000 VS Code Excellent extension installs to date. So really phenomenal uptake of automated testing based around Axe. We're seeing similar things happen in some of the products from people who use Axe that are not Deque. So as I mentioned today, there are a lot of products based on this, and their usage is also going up significantly. All of this usage uptake is driven by a lot of improvements in Axe Core. Here's a selection of the things that we did over the last 12 months to improve Axe Core itself. So first of all, we added support for WCAG 2.2 and ARIA 1.2, even though WCAG 2.2 is not yet out. We wanted to stay ahead of the curve there, and we added support for that. We also extended support for new AAA rules, and we added 3 new WCAG AAA level rules to the rule set. We increased support for the accessibility conformance testing coverage. Now, for those of you who don't know what accessibility conformance testing is, it's a W3C community group that is focused on trying to get standardization in the results that come out of accessibility testing. It's agnostic to how that accessibility testing gets done. It can be automated, it can be completely manual, it can be a combination of automated and manual, it doesn't really matter. But what they've done is they've created these rules that have particular cases and what the result of that testing should be. And Axe Core now covers 38 of the ACT rules. So check that project out, very exciting, because it's going to allow us to have some consistency between the accessibility results, regardless of who's doing the testing. We've added new localizations for Hebrew and Norwegian. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the number of languages is now up to 11. And over the last year, we added enhanced support for Shadow DOM targeting. We could always deal with Shadow DOM, We were the first, and I think we're still the only comprehensive tool that covers both Shadow DOM and iframes and any combination of Shadow DOM and iframes. But what we did this year is we made it easier to specifically target something inside a Shadow DOM if you wanted to restrict your accessibility analysis to just some section of that. So there were 291 pull requests over the year, 174 closed issues, 11 releases, and all of this activity is sponsored by Deque. So please give Deque a big round of applause for all of the investment that Deque does every year. First of all, in creating Axe Core, and then in maintaining it and improving it and making it available essentially free to everybody. Thank you, Deque. We also made some significant improvements over the course of the year in the linter. We've added support for React Native linting. This is currently in beta, so please contact us if you'd like to participate in this. But this is the beginning of the linter being able to deal with native accessibility linting, and you'll see over the coming year hopefully some improvements both to React Native and some of the other native mobile languages. We added full support for Angular. In addition to those new languages, we added 10 new web rules to all of our different frameworks that we support. And very excitedly, we added support for custom components. I'll be going to this in a little bit more detail in a minute or so, but we will soon be shipping standard material UI mapping. So that means that you'll be able to make sure that somebody using a component library is using it in an accessible way and taking advantage of the features that are built for accessibility that are built into that component library. We've added support for hierarchical configuration files, so that you can have different configuration files for different languages within the same mono repo, for example, is an interesting way, a problem that this solves, but it also solves the problem of some of your files may be JSX files, some of them may be HTML, some of them may be Markdown, and having different configurations for those different files within your repo is important. We've added a GitHub action that ties together with the Axe Linter server so that you can lint within something like GitHub. That builds on top of our existing REST API. So if you don't have GitHub, but you have some other CI/CD system and you want to build it in, you can use that REST API to do that. We've built a standard Git pre-commit hook that you can use on your developer laptop or machine to make sure that you don't push linter problems to the repo. And we've added a SonarQube integration, so you can lint against the linter server and pull that sort of stuff into your SonarQube system. So let's go back to this custom components. Why is this custom components so powerful? Well, the first example I'd like to give you is a button component that is built to implement. Most of the time when you implement button components, because you're implementing what the look of that button is and different styles and error styles and all that sort of thing, and you want to be able to make that available to all your dev teams, and so that can be consistent. And very often that maps directly to a HTML button element. But because unless your linter knows that button with an uppercase B element maps to that HTML element with a lowercase b, it doesn't really know what to do with that. So we've added that capability. So if you look over on the right here, you can see that I've got the global components. I've told the linter that this button with an uppercase maps to an HTML button element. Now it's going to then automatically apply all the rules that apply to button element to this new uppercase custom component. And you'll see any code with a squiggly line beneath it, and there's a component button. With that, it's got another icon component. So what this button element, because we've also told our configuration what the icon element, a custom element maps to, that it maps to a span, and that it has attributes. One of the attributes is label, and that label defines the text or the accessible name of that component, or the text of that component. Now the linter knows that button with that icon inside of it that doesn't have a label attribute on it, doesn't have an accessible for the icon accessible name you can get also support very, very useful to make sure that somebody, this button component has been made accessible, completely accessible. But if you use it incorrectly, you will introduce accessibility problems, and this allows you to cover that. Let me show you another example of this with more of a hierarchical component. So here we have a list component with items inside of them. So there's a component list with an uppercase L and a component I with uppercase L. In our configuration on the right-hand side, we've mapped that list element to a UL HTML element, and we've mapped the item element to an LI. And now AxLinter can apply all the linting rules to those. So first of all, it knows that a UL element should only have a certain number of different types of items inside, like LIs and things like that. And so it's noticed that there's another item where the role of button has been added to that. And because that item element maps to a normal LI, if you add a role equals button to an LI element, it's going to override the semantics. And that means that there's now a button inside a list, which you shouldn't have. So it's going to complain on the list, it's going to complain about that. But it's also able to then raise an issue against the list item itself and say, you're not really supposed to override the semantics of an LI element. So having role equals button on top of this LI element for your custom component here is something that you shouldn't be doing. So this shows you really the power of creating, along with your component library, creating these configurations and making them available to your dev teams so that when they use your configuration and your custom component library, they can make sure that they're using that in an accessible way. So we've also invested quite a lot of resources over the past year in improving the Axe DevTools extension. Now, for those of you who know this extension, this is our free version of the extension, and it embeds, of course, the Axe core library into it. But what we did over this year, and these are free modifications that are freely available to everybody, is first of all, we modified the defaults to match what is most commonly used in the industry. Because the configuration of that is not a free feature, we got a lot of feedback that there were the AAA rules being turned on was causing people a lot of trouble, and also a lot of these needs review issues were really polluting the results that were being returned by the extension and making it difficult to use. So we modified the defaults to match what is most commonly used in the industry. We also made a lot of usability improvements to better utilize the real estate within the extension. I think we got some things right and some things wrong, but we moved some buttons or the highlight buttons into places where people can find them. Then we had to move them back. So we're doing a lot of work there to test our usability improvements when we do make them. But we are trying to make the real estate that within the extension really work optimally for the use cases that we have. The two use cases being a developer finding stuff and fixing it immediately, and then the second most common use case being some sort of tester with an accessibility tester or a tester within a dev team or for a dev team doing some analysis and then reporting that to the dev team. We also implemented a 2-week update cycle, and we did over 26 releases of the DevTools extension over the past year. And this means that you're getting new Axe core versions and improvements to Axe core more often. You're getting usability improvements more often, and you're getting fixes, whether security fixes or other fixes, bug fixes, much more often than we used to do last year. In terms of our improvements we made to our paid product, Axe DevTools Pro, based on top of this, we added support for WCAG 2.2. That will show up in the free product once WCAG 2.2 is in fact a recommendation. But for now, it's a feature in that you can be turned on by people who have the Pro plan, and they can start using it already today. We also added an HTML tool to test HTML tables with the intelligent guided tests. This has computer vision built in, so it can actually look at the table, look at what it looks like, and it can identify things that look like they're row and column headers, and match those up with semantics. So it's a very powerful tool that allows you to quickly and easily test all sorts of complex different tables, complex tables using header ID association, simple tables, and everything in between. We added the structure IGT, where we took features that were in individual, very small intelligent guided tests, and we put them together in something that made a lot more sense as a single tool to test the structure of a whole page. We also enhanced the interactive elements intelligent guided test, and we added some computer vision to that so that we can make the testing a lot more efficient. Exciting feature, take a look at that. We added support for multiple runs of a single IGT. So one of our most powerful tools is the tool which allows you to test a form on a field, on a page. But some pages have multiple forms. They may, for example, have a login form on them, and they may have a sign-up form on them, and they may have other forms as well, a search form. And so what this multi-run feature allows you to do is to essentially run each IGT as many times as you need to, so you can fully test, comprehensively test an entire page, and you have all those results in a single test case. So the other good thing about this is we've added support where you can actually take these results and you can import them into Axe Auditor, where you could combine them together with other different tests into a comprehensive VPAT audit. A very powerful feature together with Axe Auditor there. We added the ability to share a full test record with links to individual issues and with screenshots. In fact, Harris Schneiderman is showing this feature today. So attend the session at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and you'll see that and how it's helping customers like US Bank to really make their accessibility testing more efficient. We added the ability to test for color contrast, where you've got text on top of images and text on top of gradients and other complex backgrounds. And that's a paid feature that builds on top of the free Axe Core color contrast testing. And we added dozens of other usability enhancements over the course of the year. So I've talked quite a lot about computer vision and artificial intelligence. So let me just talk a little bit about Deque's approach to doing this and what we can do today. There's more in the works, which I'm not going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the things that we currently do and why we do them. So the first thing that we do that's very important in accessibility testing has to do with semantics. If you see something on the screen and it looks like a button, does it behave like a button? And does it in fact, is it semantically marked up to match the way that it behaves? So part of our computer vision is to really look at the rendering of the user interface and to try to detect what we think we see, the computer vision sees in the user interface. And then we can combine that with other understanding about the user interface and with the semantics, and we can automatically raise issues. So one of the things that we do is we look at something and we say, oh, this looks like a button. And then we look at the semantics, and the semantics may be, for example, a link. And because those two things are things which often are treated as synonyms in reality, we won't automatically raise that as an issue. We'll say, okay, the thing looks like a button, but it's actually semantically implemented as a link. Let's ask the user whether that's okay. So what you can see on your screen here is you can see that the user interface is pointing out the semantics that it's found that don't match what the element looks like. And it's saying, we think this is, in this case, we think this is a heading for this table. Are we right? And then the user can quickly say yes or no, what the artificial intelligence found was right. And that really helps to speed up a lot of that complex testing. They don't have to go and they don't then have to go and look to say, is this marked up correctly? It can just say, yeah, that is in fact what it should be. And we can do the rest for them automatically under the covers. So we currently cover forms, we cover form fields, form labels, form field labels, we cover data tables, we cover data table header semantics, and we cover a lot of interactive elements in this. And we're actively working on more as I speak. The second problem that you have a lot with accessibility testing is what goes with what. So, and often as well, is the information that's displayed does it match the semantics underneath? So what we have is we have an OCR model that once again looks at the screen and turns the text on the screen into text, the image into text, and then we validate that to see whether it matches the text that's actually there semantically. So what this allows us to is to form, for example, we can with the form fields, and then we can compare those to what we find, and we can raise a lot of issues much more easily. A third area where we use computer vision or looking at the actual rendering of the user interface is with the complex color contrast situations. I already talked about this a little bit, but this is one place where we actually look at the foreground and the background, and we look at the pixel values, and we can calculate all the different color contrast values, and we know whether or not there is a color contrast issue there, and resolve that automatically for the user. So this saves a lot of time with those color contrast complex situations. And the fourth place that we use computer vision is in looking at how components change as you interact with them. So as they receive focus or harvest states, or as they change from one state to another, and making sure once again that those things are visible. So where your focus outline needs to be there, is it there? First of all, and second of all, does it pass the contrast ratios that you need? So doing all those sorts of complex calculations get done in the context of the interactive elements tool. Do visual focus indicators exist? Do they pass perception thresholds? And do the visual renderings match the semantics? So Deque's approach to artificial intelligence is really a human-centric approach. Where we can achieve zero false positives with full automation, we do that. So for example, two examples of that are focus indicators and color contrast. We know we can use the machine vision to resolve those things with 100% certainty. In other areas where it's a little bit more open to interpretation, or you need additional information, we integrate those into tools where we make the human more efficient and effective at testing those sorts of things. So our approach, unlike some of our competitors, is one that, because it's human-centric, really ensures zero false positives. So some examples of the things that we avoid because of this approach is, as I pointed out, just because something looks like a button doesn't mean that it actually is a button and should behave like a button. Just because something looks like a tab list, for example, with tabs inside of it, doesn't mean that it's actually not just a list of links. So that context and that nuance is really important in accessibility testing, and our approach means that you can really do that with a high degree of confidence. The second thing I think I'd like to point out about our artificial intelligence approach, which I think sets us aside from some of the other approaches out there, is because of all of our large number of users that we have, both of our free tools and our paid tools. We've been able to set up this continuous artificial intelligence data pipeline. So every time somebody uses the AxDevTools application, we capture a screenshot of the user interface that they're analyzing. It gets sent into a batch, it gets deduplicated, and eventually goes through a process where it's automatically labeled. It's QA'd by humans, once again, because we're very interested in having high quality data going into our models. So every single label that we add is validated by two humans to make sure that it actually matches. And then it's also goes through a process of vetting in terms of making sure that we have diversity of our data. We don't want to, for example, have some developer who's working at US Bank and who's analyzing their form and hitting the analyze button, 30, 40, maybe 50 times, generating all these images. We don't want all those images ending up in our training set, because they're going to skew that set and overfit it to that particular model. So we actually also go through a process of choosing data to make sure that it's going to add diversity to our overall data set, so that that our data is strengthened rather than weakened by that use. And then this allows us to train data sets and release a new machine learning models every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, you're going to get access to improvements behind the scenes. So Axe DevTools with these capabilities really is at the cutting edge of zero false positive, human-centric testing tools. And by the end of this year, Harris Schneiderman, who's a product manager for this product, has promised me that you will be able to do 100% of your web-based testing within the Axe DevTools Pro product, 100% in a combination of automated and semi-automated testing. Let's move on to Axe DevTools Mobile. So Axe DevTools Mobile really is the mobile testing tool today with the highest automated WCAG coverage. What we did over the last year, as I mentioned already, we added support for React Native linting. We added support for testing Android apps built with Jetpack Compose. We added additional iOS and Android rules. We added the ability to do experimental rules. These are rules where we're not 100% sure that the zero false positive thing is being met, and we want to make them available to users of the product so they can test them, give us feedback on them before we turn them on for everyone. So if you have this product, you can now turn experimental rules on and off to see how those results work in your sort of environment. Give us feedback. And then we've added a complete offline mode to make it much easier to integrate this into CI/CD systems, regardless of whether there's downtime, network problems, or whatever. So there's the ability to integrate the mobile testing into a CI/CD, completely offline CI/CD process is an important addition that we made this last year. Moving on to Axe Auditor. Axe Auditor, for those of you who are not familiar with the product, is a product that allows you to do comprehensive audits of all sorts of digital experiences. It has testing methodologies for, of course, web and mobile, but in addition to that, it has testing methodologies for all sorts of document formats, kiosks, native Windows application, and more. So it really allows organizations that want to produce VPATs or do comprehensive audits to do that in a really consistent way across the entire organization. So what we've done to enhance this product over the course of the last year is we've allowed an integration with Axe DevTools Pro, so you can use the DevTools Pro automated and intelligent guided tests, and then you can integrate those, import those results into Axe Auditor and do the rest of the manual testing in the context of Axe Auditor, and also combine multiple tests together to create sort of a VPAT that you can then export. We've added the ability to share a test run, so that once you've done a test of some sort, you can make that available, whether it's to your developers or to executives or other stakeholders in the product. We've added the ability to create a test with a CSV upload, so this makes the creation of complex test cases a lot easier. We've added a system-wide issue search with great searching capability, so it's a lot easier to find the things after you've done a lot of testing. And we've added many performance and usability enhancements over the course of the year as well. Axe Monitor is our original flagship product. Axe Monitor is a product that allows you to comprehensively audit using an automated crawler whole websites, whether those websites are live on your production systems or whether they're systems that are still under development in your testing and your QA and your development environments. So there were actually close to 60 million pages analyzed last year with this product, and we added the ability to do enhanced critical user flow monitoring. So this is a key feature that we added last year, and we've seen a lot of uptake of this feature. It's always been possible with Axe Monitor to do scripting to be able to, for example, log into applications and get through the authentication. We support a wide array of different types of authentication to be able to do that. But the addition of this enhanced critical user flow monitoring, we are now able to walk through complex workflows. So for example, say you have a workflow where you have users signing up for a new credit card, or users going through a dispute process of some sort. You can now walk through that process in lots of different iterations, and at each point along the way where there's some new state of the user interface that you want to test, it'll analyze it and it'll pull those results together in a way that makes sense and can be reported on to the stakeholders, whether that's the developers or the executives on the state of the accessibility of those critical flows. So a very powerful feature. We've seen a lot of uptake of that this last year. We enhanced our PDF scanning and we added 28 PDF rules. So that's a significant improvement over the capability that we had before. But we also added support for PDF UA. So our PDF scanning rules generally are WCAG 2.0 compliant or 2.1 compliant rules. But we know that a lot of people in the PDF community are really also interested in PDF UA. And so we've added support for that as well. And once again, Axe Monitor has also, over the course of the year, added a large amount of usability and reporting improvements. And you will see a lot more of that also in this coming year. So last but not least, Deque University. I know technically it's not an Axe product, but it is based around the Deque way and has built into it a lot of information that ties into Axe Core. All the Axe Core help pages are hosted on Deque University. So I felt like it really also warranted some coverage in talking about the enhancements that we've made over the last year. One of the things that I'm most proud of about Deque University is that we give out free scholarships to people with disabilities. It gives them access to all of the courses on Deque University. They can learn to do comprehensive audits. They can learn all aspects of accessibility from design through development, through testing. They can learn about how to manage accessibility programs. So it's really comprehensive set of training that we have available on Deque University, and we give this all away for free to people with disabilities. And that number of scholarships this year has gone up to 5,244 scholarships. And these really change the lives of these people. I've talked to and had interactions and messages with people who were unemployed. They had no job prospects, and they were able to come to Deque University, start learning about accessibility, learning how to test for accessibility, learning what accessibility meant in the development process. And now some of these people are employed by Google and Amazon and other companies like that. So it's really life-changing, and I'm really excited that we've reached this milestone. Please put out the word to everybody, all disabled people, that they can do this. They can get a scholarship to this for free. Last year, we had 84,000 courses that were started over the course of the year. That's a fantastic number. We launched some new fast track courses. The focus of these is that they're video-based content. They're also geared towards understanding the basics. So they're also shorter, more consumable pieces of content that also cater to different ways of learning. Over the course of the year, we also added graded exams. This is the ability to measure at the end of a course the learning and retention. So somebody went through the course, they read every single page within the course, they watched all the videos, they did all the little exercises. How much of that did they actually retain? This is a configurable option that organizations can turn on or off, and they can turn it on or off in different ways. One of the things they can do is they can allow somebody to take the test first in order to test out of having to take the course. So for example, if you're an accessibility expert and you move from Deque, say, and you go and work for Microsoft, it would be nice if Microsoft didn't require you to take all of those trainings again if you can already do that. So that testing out of a course is one of the features that you have during the graded exams. And so organizations can turn it on and really manage and make sure that people aren't only taking the course, but they're also actually retaining the information at the end of the course as well. We've added WCAG 2.2 readiness in Deque University. So first of all, the Deque University platform itself is WCAG 2.2 compliant. In fact, it was the first platform to implement WCAG 2.2, and it is a representative implementation of WCAG 2.2. So the course content is ready for WCAG 2.2 as well. So as soon as the WCAG 2.2 course is published, our course content for WCAG 2.2 will also be made available, so people can start learning about that and becoming experts in WCAG 2.2. It's been a fantastic year. There's been a lot. There's going to be a lot more this year. I'm very excited about the things that are come this year. Please attend the sessions that I have pointed out. And with that, Liz, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Dylan. We have a lot of great questions here, so I'm just going to jump right in. So everybody knows you can upvote the questions, so that would definitely help us to prioritize if you can help out with that. Let me grab a question here. All right. Are there plans to add ACT's core rules based on the European standard EN 301549?
So the European standard 301, whatever the number is
301549.
Yeah, is very similar to WCAG 2.0, A and AA. There are very small differences. I think the plan is that we will start tagging the rules, so that those tags are available on the rules that are 100% equal between WCAG and the European standard. And I don't know at this point in time of any specific plans to take into account the differences other than just adding the tags to the rules. But please, if you have any specific suggestions, go to the ACT's Core GitHub project and help us to figure out what the right approach is. You could even contribute to the GitHub project yourself to help us get there a little faster. So please help us out with that.
Great, thank you. Okay, so regarding WCAG 2.2 and the fact that it hasn't been published yet, how are we able to inform users about some of the criteria that are still in that draft stage and may change?
Well, I think that I'm not sure what you mean by users, but if you want to stay abreast of what's happening in WCAG 2.2, I do believe there's a session at AXCON that's going to cover some of that. So please attend that session. But otherwise, I would say stay abreast of what Deque puts out information, keeping people up to date about that on an ongoing basis. And if you have access to XDevTools Pro, you can actually turn on those rules and you can start to play around with them and see what effect they might have on your testing, your results, as well as other Deque products like Axe Monitor. You can also get access to the WCAG 2.2 rules, and that'll give you an idea of what effect that could start having on your organization. Those are some of the ways I think you can stay on top of what's coming in WCAG 2.2.
Great, thank you. And there is a session tomorrow that Wilco and Melanie from Deque are going to be doing on WCAG 2.2 and the 3.0 update. That's tomorrow at noon noon Eastern.
Yeah, I think if I'm correct, that session will also cover a little bit of ACT stuff as well.
Okay, awesome. Okay, you did just mention Axe Monitor, so there's a couple questions in here on that. Is Axe Monitor the only product that tests PDFs?
At this point in time, from Deque, that's the only product that tests PDFs.
Okay. All right. So this question is on Axe Linter. Is Axe Linter available for Visual Studio? They know it's available for Visual Studio Code, but is it available for Visual Studio?
So we don't, at this point in time, have a plugin for Visual Studio, but if you get hold of our pre-commit hook and our API, you can actually build command line. You can run it from the command line, and that can be built into any editor, even ones that we don't have a plugin for. So that would be my recommendation is contact us about the Axlinter server capability, and that'll allow you to build it into any of the tools that Deque doesn't currently support today.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another quick question on WCAG 2.2. Do you know when the content will be available on Deque University?
My understanding about this is that we will turn that content on once WCAG 2.2 is a recommended standard or recommendation. So once it goes through the process of the W3C and the working group, essentially saying that this is ready and publishing it, then it'll become available in DQU.
Okay, thank you. When question on back when you were talking about Axe Core and the Axe DevTools extension, when you refer to Axe Core, does that include the Axe DevTools Chrome plugin? What differences, if any, are there between the two tools?
Well, so Axe Core is really the engine for testing HTML pages, right? So that's what that is, and that is embedded into the DevTools extension. But the DevTools extension does a bunch of things that are possible through Axe Core, but you need to be configured. So one of the things it does, if you run Axe Core and you just run the library, it's going to return all the results for all the different rules, right? All the rules that are turned on by default, it will return results for. Whereas what the Axe DevTools extension does is it configures them in a particular way by default. So I mentioned that one of the changes we made over the last year is we essentially made the default within the Axe DevTools extension to be WCAG 2 and 2.1 levels A and AA for both of those standards. So that means that, for example, the AAA rules are off. We also turn the best practices off by default, and we turn what we call the needs review issues off by default. Now, the Axe Core library can generate all of those issues and will give you those by default, but they can differ from what you will see inside Axe Core because inside the Axe extension, because the Axe extension has really set the configuration options to match what we think most people want. There are other differences to the Axe DevTools extension. For example, the Axe DevTools extension will automatically make sure that all the iframes are tested on any given page. You're going to have to do that yourself if you're using Axe Core directly. So it does a lot of other things that require work automatically for you. We also ship multiple versions of Axe Core with the Axe DevTools extension. So if you want to standardize at a particular with a particular Axe Core version to make sure that all the ways that you're using Axe Core across your organization, you're getting the same results. The Axe DevTools Pro allows you to choose a particular version of Axe Core. That's a feature that is not technically part of Axe Core, but we've built on top of Axe Core. So there's a lot more to the Axe DevTools extension than that. If you go to docs.deque.com, you can actually see the full documentation for Axe DevTools extension and what it can and cannot do. And I suggest that you do that because there's a lot more to what it can do, especially in the Pro feature set than what I'm able to mention today.
Great. And that's a good segue into the next question here. You mentioned that by the end of the year, you will have Axe DevTools Pro ready to only use automated and semi-automated tests. Will all manual tests be replaced by automated and semi-automated tests?
No, I said that Harris has promised me that by the end of the year, you'll be able to do all of your testing, 100% of your testing within the extension. And that'll be a combination of fully automated and semi-automated tests. Yes, we will be creating semi-automated tests for the 100% of WCAG, 2.1 A and AA, not 2.2, or maybe 2.2. I'm not going to have Harris shave his head if he if he doesn't implement 2.2, because that wasn't released at the time that he and I had this discussion. But the aim is that you'll be able to do all your testing in an automated or semi-automated way.
Got it. Thank you, Dylan. Okay, another question on Axe Monitor. When can we expect some enhancements to the Axe Monitor API, such as scan creation, etc.?
I don't have off the top of my head the details of when those sorts of changes are being made. What I can say, those specific changes are being made. What I can say is please stay in contact with Sachin Gupta and the rest of that product team, and they can keep you updated over the course of the year. But what I can say is that we are comprehensively redoing the user interface of the product, and that means that the underlying APIs are also being overhauled. And so over the course of this year, you'll see a lot of changes to the user interfaces, and you will see a lot of changes to the APIs. And please just stay in contact with the team to get regular updates. One of the things you can do, this is not just for Axe Monitor, this is for all Axe products, is you can actually sign up for our email list, where we send you out, we only send out to this email list, if you sign up for it, updates to our product. So you will get notified every time we have an update to a product. Most of the time those go out before the update actually gets released, but at the very least they'll go out at the same time that the release becomes available to users. So that's definitely something I would consider if you're interested in staying up to date with those things. The other thing you can do is join the Axe community Slack, and you can have conversations with the whole product team there, and we can keep you up to date there as well.
Great, thank you, Dylan. Okay, there's a couple of quick ones here on the Axe extension. Is there a free Axe DevTools extension for Safari, like the ones that you have for Chrome, Edge, and Firefox?
The short answer is no. The reason for that is Safari just didn't have the sort of features that we needed in order to do that. That is changing. So it's quite possible that at some point we may release a Safari version. We've talked about it, about doing that. If you're interested in that, once again, making us aware of that you're interested in that, and the reasons why Safari is preferable to you over the other browsers would be useful in helping us to justify that, or to rank that in terms of priorities against some of the other things that we've been asked to do. So the places you can do that is, once again, the Axe community Slack, or on the Axe core GitHub project as well. You can give us feedback on that sort of thing.
Okay, I think we have time for one or two more questions. What does the Axe extension, or does the Axe extension support Shadow DOM based content? Excuse me. Yes,
the short answer is yes, we do support Shadow DOM, iframes inside Shadow DOM, all combinations of the above. There are some known bugs where certain things don't work quite 100%. Like, for example, sometimes we can't highlight certain things inside a cross-domain iframes. But in terms of Shadow DOM, there's really no restrictions in terms of what we can test. Okay. If you're aware of something that's not working for you, please once again go to the Axe core project and report a bug, because it should all be working.
Great. I'm going to squeeze in two more questions. Does the Axe linter work on the CLI?
The Axe linter does work on the CLI if you get what's called the Axe linter server. That is a paid feature, and you can, if you're interested in that, Liz will share the links of where you can sign up to get a trial of that particular feature. But the answer is yes, we do support the command line.
Thank you. Okay, last question here. Using Axe, do you have a recommended approach to produce a detailed report of compliance for an entire product?
Yeah, the best way to do that today is, for HTML, for example, is to use Axe DevTools Pro to do the 84% find 84% of the issues that you can find with that. import those results into Axe Auditor, and do the rest of the testing inside Axe Auditor. That's the best way to do that today, to do comprehensive testing with our Axe products. That'll allow you to fully utilize all the automation that we have, and to very comprehensively and consistently do the rest of the testing that needs to be done manually.
All right. With that, I think we are at time. Thank you so much, Dylan, for a great session on all of the latest Axe updates. And thanks to everyone for attending.
Thank you very much. Thanks for using
Bye.
Axe.